Hi guys, myself Yogesh Kothiya, and today we'll be learning how to build AI assistant using open source conversational AI framework which is Rasa. Okay, so in this session we'll check the overview of Rasa. We'll understand the terminology concepts of Rasa, and I also show you some demo about whatever we have built in now. So I assume that you guys have known the importance of chatbot and where and how it can be used. Just to reiterate, chatbot overall has a huge scope, and most of the mundane tasks or repetitive tasks, conversational tasks, I'm saying, can be replaced by chatbot. And since voice is also coming into reality, like Alexa and all, uh, chatbot on top of voice on top of chatbot can be a great user experience when you talk about this, right? So uh, just brainstorm with your colleagues or friends, and see if you can come up with some ideas where you can use a chatbot to solve some problem. It can be anything. So for example, nowadays, at least in India, we see lot many COVID-19 related chatbots where it will help you to find out are you affected or not. Some kind of information where you can get it through a WhatsApp chatbot or WhatsApp chatbot. So it definitely has a huge impact. So that was all about the interest of chatbot. Now we'll talk about the architecture of the chatbot. So chatbot is something very very similar to humans. Okay, so just like how we talk to someone, right? We try to understand someone's sentence or someone's reply, and then once we understand the message, then we in our brain itself we have the context of previous messages or some sort of past experience and all, and then we use that to realize, okay, what is that message. Then based on the message, we try to perform something. For example, if I say, okay, give me something, okay, so since I'm not specifying anything, you might ask, okay, what do you want? So in that case, we are asking a follow-up question to get some more information, right? So we do that to reach to the conclusion where we to reach to the conclusion where we fulfill some action. Just tell you, we have three components in the chatbot mainly. One is section where we understand the understanding the user utterances or user messages or user input on query. Okay. Second thing is the dialogue management. So where we hold the context and other metadata to carry on the conversation. Okay. And third thing is the fulfillment. So what we do in fulfillment is we go ahead and fill that basically complete that request, right? So just to give you a very famous example, I can say I want to fly from, let's say, America to India. Okay, so when I say I want to fly from America to India, my intent here is a flying. Okay, so when I say to bot or someone, the person might ask, okay, so that is not sufficient information to find out the list of flights, right? So what person might ask is, which date you want to fly, right? And when I say, okay, I want to fly tomorrow, so now I have minimum details to fetch some information. For example, source, destination, and date of journey, right? So what we do in that case is, based on this minimum information, we go ahead and get the details and present it to the user, right? So same way chatbot works. It has to identify the intent of the user or the utterance, and then extract the entities. So here entities are source, destination, the date of journey, right? So when I say I want to fly from America to India, uh, bot will ask a missing entities. One of the missing entity is a uh, date of journey, right? And once I have all the details, I can go ahead and hit the API, some flight API, get some details and show it to the user, right? In the nice possible way, right? So if I have to put this component, put this story into components. So whenever I say I want to fly from America to India, that intent identification or entity extraction is done by NLE. Okay, that's the first component. That's the first thing which will come, which will that's the first component where it will receive the user query. Now what happens parallelly is there is a dialogue management where it will hold the context of the conversation, and since the entity was missing, the overall chatbot will ask the entities. Okay, and so once the chatbot will ask the entity, dialog management will first will store source and destination, then it will store the data of journey, and then once everything we have, then fulfillment part of the third component will go ahead and complete the action. So action could be anything. You pay the database or you call the API and get some information, right? So that's the overall flow of the chatbot, and similarly, in the agenda, in today's agenda, will first we'll first get to know the scope of the bot, right? So in my last example, the scope of the bot was to find the flights based on source destination and the current date of journey, right? Here we'll look at the scope of the bot. Then we'll just quickly look at the respective API on how to get the data, and and then I'll tell you about the things which is required to understand the Rasa, and things which is required to start your own project. Okay, and so at the end I'll show you the demo, and that's the overall idea of overall agenda of the today's session. Once you are familiar with the scope and the minimum concepts required to learn Rasa or build a project, in the next session we'll go ahead and do hands-on, and that so today you might just get the overview of everything, but in the next session when you try implementing, you'll get the you might get more questions, and you might face more difficulty to implement something, right? So that's where you learn. So we have kept nice 1 week time where you go ahead and explore whatever you want, right? So that will definitely give an extra advantage to try more things during the hands-on, and you can definitely ask more questions next time, right? So right now, since it is more of a one-way communication, we are also recording, so I think Jay can share the recording later on to with you all to go through the same webinar again to get more details. So that's it. So we'll just go to the scope of the bot. So scope of the bot for now is very simple. So just just for now, till you till we don't come to the point where we are exploring Rasa. Now we just want to think from user's perspective. Okay, so what the first thing which you'll ask when you are talking to the restaurant chat? So first thing you are going to ask is, look, I'm looking for a food. Okay, and very first thing that any application or any chatbot has to ask is your location, right? Because without current location or any specified location, bot or any application will not be able to help you, right? Because the application can be global. So first thing a bot has to ask in our case is a location. Second thing, what can ask is what we have defined here is a cuisine, right? Because most likely we are, we might prefer, food items or food preference based on cuisine. So that's the second option. And once we have this minimum two option, we can go ahead and query the respective API and fetch all the restaurants, right? So as you see, this is a conversational diagram. So whenever we have any project in our office also or in our company also, what we do is, first thing is, in a normal software engineering, we come up with the scope of the work, right? And where scope of the entire project is defined properly, and then we go ahead and pass it to the developer, right? So developer has to understand the scope, and then developer has to design, develop the entire application. Similarly, even chatbot project also has a scope of work, but in between the scope of the work and the development is something called conversational diagram. So since the software engineering might or might not have such kind of UI elements or UI diagram, but we need to have such kind of thing in the chatbot because it's a conversational element. It's not something where if you click at something, it will go to next step, and if you click at that step, you need to go to next step, right? So there is a fixed flow or fixed set of instruction or set of steps. In chatbot, since it is a open, right, it's user can definitely end up messing around with the chatbot. So a developer or a project a client should have a clear understanding of what is the flow of the chat, right? So that will eliminate all sorts of errors in terms of development or user experience. So and for development also, it will be very easy to go through and understand the scope and then implement the chatbot, considering like comparing with the same thing must have if it is written in the word, verbal way, right? So this is far way better than keeping it as a document. So it's very simple. So like every chatbot, it will start with the like every flow, it will start with the start. Just think of it like you're talking to the human, and whenever you try to have a conversation with someone, most likely you try to introduce yourself, right? Or you just say what you can do or something like that. So as soon as someone starts talking to the chatbot, first thing what I should do is welcome the user, and then tell the user that okay, the bot can do this. So if you keep it open, user will tend to ask anything, and that's where bot will fail. Right? So in the chatbot, chatbot development, I would say 50% of the weightage is given to conversational design of the chatbot, right? If you just give the scope of work to a developer might not be able to understand the conversational elements which we need to keep it in the chatbot, right? So until unless we don't have a very defined or very well thought conversational design, chatbot itself will likely to fail. Even if you design so intelligent chatbot, it might fail because you as a user it's not able to understand, user not able to understand the chatbot scope, etc. So no, I can keep on talking about this thing, but yeah, the crux is we need to pay attention to the chatbot, sorry, conversational design, right? So this is the flow. As soon as I start talking to the chatbot, it will welcome me, and then I can ask the question. I'm looking for food, and if the entities are missing here, so when I say I'm looking for food, the scope here is, the intent here is I'm looking, I have to find. Intent here is to search a restaurants, okay, and I need some minimum details to get to the point where I can, suggest some restaurants, right? So I'll ask the very first thing, so mandatory elements, I can say. So first thing I should ask is the location, and then whenever user says, I'm at ABC place, bot should ask next entity, which is cuisine, and then when I say I'm fine with Italian food, then bot will just take that element like location and entity, and then go and hit the API and get the list of restaurants, right? So that's the overall scope of the bot. As it is self-explanatory, the thing that you see in the oval shape, which is in green color, it's the backend of the chatbot where you do all the API calling and all, and the thing which you see in the red is someone where the user is asking you questions, and you see the box you see in the blue, it's a mandatory entity, right? So if you think of as a user, for example, if I want to search a restaurant, I'll just say I'm here, like at ABC place, and then I could be fine with any cuisine, right? So I'll just anything is fine with me. So in that case, cuisine could not be mandatory field to find the restaurant, right? So location is something which is mandatory. So that's the flow of the chatbot, where location is mandatory and cuisine is the optional field. Okay, so I can just say I'm looking for the food. So I'll just take an example. So I can say I'm looking for a food, Italian food in Gachibowli. So Gachibowli is a place in Hyderabad, and in that sentence I have told everything. I'm looking for the food. Location is Gachibowli, and cuisine is Italian, right? I can also say I'm looking for the food, and then bot will ask what is your location. Then I can say Gachibowli, or I'm at Gachibowli, or near to Gachibowli, and then bot will ask what cuisine you prefer, and then I'll say I'm fine with Chinese food, right? So that also can happen. There are other ways also, like I can just say I'm at Gachibowli, I'm looking for the food. So here you mention location first, and then you miss the cuisine, where bot will ask the cuisine and go ahead with the flow. Or vice versa, you can say I'm looking for the Italian food, the bot will ask the locations, right? So the point here is, since you are not sure what can come as an input, the it adds the complexity to the development, right? So that's the beauty, and I think that's the advantage and disadvantage of the building a chatbot. But if you think through well, and if you restrain your conversation with the proper message and all, then it will most likely to do well, even if you develop okay bot, right? So that was the reason I wanted to stress on design of the chatbot, for development, right? So are everyone is clear with the scope of the bot? I assume it's very very simple, but I'm assuming that everyone is clear with the scope of the bot. So we'll see the API calling part when we go ahead, but the main idea was wanted to tell you guys about the scope of the bot. Okay, so uh, uh, Zomato is as I mentioned, right? It's a food delivery application in the India, and where you can order the food, where you can look for the restaurants, right? So something similar to Yelp in the USA. So so they have their own API, and it's open for some thousand requests per day, and we can definitely build some small MVP sort of chatbot on top of that, right? So it's pretty simple. So I'll not go much and talk about Zomato API. We'll keep this thing for exploration in between. When we have the next session. So the only idea is we have to have couple of we need to go through couple of endpoints of the API where we just need to fetch details, right? So let me just mention here, right? So as you see here, right? So whenever we are asking a location, okay, so what bot has to do is it has to identify the location and then go ahead and get the lat long and all, right? Uh, so from now onwards I'm going bit deep in the technical aspects of the chatbot building. So what happens is, as I mentioned, right, we have to identify the intent, so and we have to extract the entities, right? So extracting entities can be of two ways. Either you get it from the pre-trained uh, word vector pre-trained entity, or you define or train your own entity. So I'm assuming that you guys are aware of NLP and all. If not, then what I'll do is I'll share the our group link, Telegram group link. You guys can join there, and you can ask questions there itself, right? So intent is something where you classify the intent, the class basically. So when I say I want to fly from point A to point B, versus I want to for example, I want to okay. I want to book a flight from point A to point B versus I want to book a cab from point A to point B, right? So the intent in the flight was to, find out the flights. In the intent of the second utterance was to find out the cab, right? So those are the two classes, and the job of the intent classification is to classify which class it belongs to, right? So that's the intent classification. Entity extraction is something, as I mentioned, it's a extracting entities like source location, destination location, date of journey, etc. The point is here location is entity, okay, and as I mentioned, you can reuse the pre-trained entities, or you can train your own entities. So what is pre-trained here is something which is trained heavily on some large data, and you do not to retrain or gather the same data and train again, right? So example could be fetching the date, fetching the currency, fetching the location and all, right? So since there are a number of locations definitely all over the world, we can't simply train the chatbot with that sort of location, right? Even if, let's say, even if you have to do it, you can't basically that's not a efficient solution to the business problem, right? So people already has done it. For example, you can use Google Map API, or here we have used a Bing API. So you can use third-party service to extract the location. So that's the one thing. So basically, here basically we're not using a chatbot entity extraction to get the location, but using which is fine. Second thing is cuisine. So cuisine is something which is very limited in numbers, right? So we can definitely get the list of cuisine, and then go ahead and train with the list of cuisine, right? So here we'll use the cuisine as a training data to the chatbot. So uh, that's the overall idea. So what happens is you get the location from the Bing Map API. You pass the utterance. Bing Map API able to word sentence or a couple of phrases as a location, and then it will give you the let long of that location and other data metadata, like for example, if I say Gachibowli, it will tag Gachibowli as a India, right? Like it's in India, right? So, or it will tag Gachibowli Hyderabad, India. So you will get more details with respect to that particular output, right? So that's the advantage of doing that thing. And what happens is once you extract the location, then what happens is you go ahead and hit the Zomato API. So, so this is the these are the endpoints of the Zomato API. What happens is, yeah. So what you do is you pass the location name here, and then you get the let long of that location, which you already get it from the Bing Map API. But other than that, you get something called entity type, entity ID. So that's how the Zomato API is designed. So every location is coded with some sort of entity type or entity ID. Using that element, you can use that element to fetch other details, right? So I'll tell you how. So here in our case, um, we are getting the location. We are giving that location to some API. What Zomato API is giving us is a city ID. You see here city ID, right? So we can use that city ID to do other API extraction, right? So we got a city ID from the main flow. When the user gets the cuisine, we are passing that cuisine to a Zomato API. It is giving us the cuisine ID, right? So now we have a city ID and cuisine ID, and then we'll go ahead and hit the final endpoint, and then we'll get the list of restaurants, right? So when we talk about APIs, APIs are not that simple where we directly hit the location name or cuisine name and then we get the final output, right? So to make it more structured and scalable, they use some sort of ID to map things, right? So so basically what we're doing here is we're converting a location, a word, into some sort of ID, and cuisine, that is word again, to some sort of ID, and using that ID to get the list of restaurants. And so we might get more than 10 100 restaurants. We're just picking the top 5 and displaying it to the user, right? So fetch list of restaurants based on the location and cuisine, go ahead and display it to the user, right? So it's up to you how well you display, so you can improve the UX to the point you want, but this is the overall scope of the bot. Okay, so the point here is so that's what we'll implement here as well.